What up, this your boy Kenneth Stones, aka Kofi Weasons, one half of the Dirty Hills podcast, and you are watching the 1130 podcast. Not 730, but he is 730. But you watching my guy Dre from the 1130 podcast. Man, make sure y'all hit that like, share, subscribe button. And this is Dirty Hills Approved.
I'm from the city, DC, that's where I'm from. 1130 podcast, Dre and Willsy is the one. Let's get it, yeah. Who with me? Let's get it, yeah. Who with me? Yeah. I'm from the city, DC, that's where I'm from. Let's get it. 1130 podcast, Dre and Willsy is the one.
Yo, what it do, everybody? It's your man Dre, aka Dre on the Wheels. This is episode 60 of the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. What's goody, everybody doing out there? Appreciate you guys joining me back here for the podcast, man. It's Friday, so you know what that means, man. It's time to talk some pro wrestling, man, here on the 1130 podcast. Good morning, good night, good afternoon to all my listeners all across the world, you know, in the States, Germany, Canada, the UK. I appreciate everyone joining me back here for the podcast, man. It's going to be a great show, you dig, man. I'm not riding solo this week. I got a great guest, you guys, lined up. Yes, great guest. But before we get into all that, you guys, make sure wherever you're listening to this podcast at, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, make sure you subscribe, follow the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, like it, leave a comment, and also don't forget to follow the 1130 podcast on all social media platforms. But you guys, like I was saying, man, great guest, you guys, lined up for the books, you guys. And yes, man, he's a really cool guest, man. I always try to, reach out in my circle and my network, circle to, bring guys on so we can continue to grow, whether it's myself or others, who join the podcast. And my guest, you guys, this week is going to be a very cool guest, like I said. My man, Warren Marlowe, you guys. Yes, Warren Marlowe, a.k.a. the American Prodigy, you guys. He's a former independent pro wrestler at CCW. He's in health and fitness right now, you guys. So he's doing this thing. Really big fan of The Rock. So when like-minded people come together, we're going to really get it in. And also, you guys, he's the host of Buzzing With Marlowe, you guys. Coming to us from Jacksonville, Florida. Man, we're going to chop it up and have some fun. But before we get into that, shout out my guest who was on last week, you guys, Kawam Shakir. I thank you so much for being on the podcast. But my man, Warren Marlowe, we're going to get into everything, man. I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. As you can tell, I am. It's Talk Pro Wrestling time, so we're going to get into all of that, you guys. Yo, Warren, man, how's it going?
I'm doing good, Dre. I'm doing good. How are you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, man. I'm doing wonderful. I appreciate you having the time to join me on the podcast this week.
Oh, absolutely, man. I know it's long overdue. I know we've been trying to set this up for a long time, so I'm looking so forward to this.
Yeah, been a long time, man. Been a long time, but yo, man, I always kind of like reach out to people that be in my circle or that I close network with, and you're another guy that I really enjoy. I really enjoy your podcast, and like-minded, my guy, like-minded. But how's everything? How's your day going?
It's doing good, man. A little bit of rain. I mean, can't complain. Obviously, with COVID thing, that's finally starting to ease off. Even though Florida right now, no rules type scenario. I don't know about on your area, but I mean, can't complain.
Yeah, you can't complain, man. You can't complain right here, man. It's a little rainy right now. The day is, a little wet. So I'm ready to get back to some sunshine. But it's been hot though. It's been hot. But once again, yeah, you're right, man. Once again, Warren, man, I appreciate you joining me on the podcast this week on Talk Pro Wrestling. We're going to get into everything, get to know you and stuff like that. Like I said, I checked out your podcast, Buzzing With Marlowe, man. I really enjoyed it. You was also, before we got, on today to chat it up, I was asking, did you wrestle and stuff like that, or your name, and you were telling me about your wrestling name, American Prodigy, and you said that you wrestled for some time, and I listened to your podcast. Also, you wrestled for about 6 years. How's that going?
Oh man, I mean, it's a kid living a dream, man. I can't say anything bad. I can't. It's painful, but I mean, who cares about the pain, man? It's about the grind. Basically, I was a little 5-year-old boy that got to live a dream that I never thought could happen. I mean, that's really all I can put on that. Like, there's no words to describe it. Like, the way it started, the situation that happened, I was just in a bad issue, a bad depression. So it was like, either do something with this or might do something that I might not want to do. So I decided just to take an effort on it. It basically was just to try it out, just to say, hey, I've done it. Because I watched WWE. I've been watching WWE since I was like 4 years old. Love The Rock. That's my dude. Like, that's literally been everything for me in wrestling. Like, everything that man's done, I was just like, man, I want to do that. I want to be that guy. And my motto when I was younger was like, you want to look like The Rock, but obviously I like to play basketball, so I thought dressing like John Cena was like fitting in the trend type look. So that just like even escalated even more. I was like, you know what? I could wrestle in baggy shorts and stuff like that. That would not even matter. But the funny thing is with all that is my character, I didn't see myself ever being a mask character. But when I started training, I had too much facial expressions to where it had to happen. So literally I was always smiling when I'm getting hit every time. They're like, you got to stop smiling. You got to stop showing so much. Like, we know you love this, but you can't sit here and smile when someone's hitting you as hard as they are and you just fall to the ground. I was like, I'm just loving it. So we just came with the idea of me wearing a mask, and I came up with the idea of covering my whole face just because the areas that we wrestled, it was areas I basically grew up in at first. So it was like, I got to cover my eyes. I've got to change the whole thing. Like, you got to make this look like I'm Superman from a Clark Kent look. That was like how my main goal was to do with it. So I came up with ideas of a Power Ranger and Spider-Man. And that's what came with American Prodigy.
Hey man, that's really cool. That is really cool. So you couldn't stop smiling or anything. Everybody just kept hitting you with suplexes.
Clotheslines. I mean, like 300-pound dude just sitting here, boom, and I'm sitting here smiling. Like, the trainer looked at me, he's like, I've never seen someone that sits here and smile getting beaten up. And I was like, man, it's awesome. Like, when for the longest time when I watched wrestling, all I knew was WWE. All I knew was WCW. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't know how big wrestling was. So when I got into the independent wrestling, I got more into Tim Horner, Brad Armstrong, and I was watching more of those guys than anything. Like, when I got into wrestling, obviously you tell people that, hey, I watched The Rock. If you really my size, 190-pound guy at 5'8", you're not going to be able to watch a wrestling match of The Rock and be able to imitate that guy, period. Mm-hmm. You just can't. Yeah. So I had to be realistic on it. So I looked at my trainer was telling me like all these older wrestlers, and he was telling me, look at Brad Armstrong, Tim Horner, the Patriot. Obviously, that had to be parts into that character too. And I wanted to change that up. So instead of carrying a flag, I put it on my gloves. So even though everybody wants to say, oh, that's the AJ Styles wasn't in WWE. He wasn't getting all that publicity shown in there. And, and I was just like, I wanted to change it up as much as I could. Like I said, that was the cross with Power Rangers because I love the little morphin time thing. That was the pretty cool with that. But those were the main guys I really watched. And then obviously you saw New Japan. You saw Britain, New London, all the type of wrestling, and it's so different. And I was just mind boggled. Like, obviously, WWE is not the only wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, man. I know exactly how you feel because it was probably about like 10 years ago, where I kind of like were getting into like TNA, because WWE, of course, was the only show in town. So once I started getting into like a little bit of TNA Impact, and I was looking over there and I saw Ring of Honor, and I started getting into these wrestling groups, and I'm like, wow, you know what, man? Hey, WWE is just not always about WWE, and it's a lot more stuff.
The wrestling format's really different. It's really different because, like, when I watched the New Japan matches, I didn't know that they really wrestled to that time limit, and I'm just like, like, you could go that long. I mean, I would love to go that long, but I mean, every night doing that distance, and it's just like, okay, that's different. Like I didn't see it like that format, and because obviously we've just been shown with WWE stuff. And I mean, I've grown up, and I still tell you to this day, I'm a WWE guy. Like, the product's probably not the best in the world, but I'm still gonna be that person. It's like saying watch the Fast and the Furious movies, man. Obviously, you're gonna go watch them, even if they're not as great as they used to be, just because you've basically started watching these when you were younger. So it's like a tradition to keep watching.
Exactly. That's the enjoyable thing about watching other wrestling. It's so different. It really is, though. You talked about how you were dealing with a lot of things before getting into wrestling, and you had to wear a mask. Did you want to grow up being a wrestler, or you had other plans that led you to be a wrestler?
So, I mean, I've always wanted to be a wrestler, but I mean, I never saw myself as a wrestler. I never saw, like, my mindset, I was that old school guy, like, I'm not 260 pounds, solid muscle. I mean, I'm in shape, but I did not see myself as like Hulk Hogan and guys like that. That's how I believed that you had to be as a wrestler.
Yeah.
And then when I watched AJ Styles, when I watched Rey Mysterio and stuff like that, then I actually went to an independent show to actually see the trainers, because he has a wrestling promotion that he takes his trainees after they graduate and actually do shows with them. And I actually went to one of the shows, and I looked at it, I was like, you know what? I actually could do this. I could actually fit in with this. And he's like, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you every ounce that I can to work with you on this. And you just got to give me everything you got. And I told him I would. And like I said, at first, I just did it to try it, just to say I did it. And when I just started doing it more and more, man, I just loved it so much more. And it was just like a kid in candy store, man. Like, it was just literally like, you're telling me I can be a professional wrestler and not be 260 pounds, like, and not be considered labeled as the little guy. Awesome.
Yeah. Because growing up watching WWE, everybody was big. Everybody wore 270, 245, with Triple H, or where was The Rock. Like how you mentioned The Rock, all-time favorite, my God, all-time favorite. Oh, that's my... Man, I noticed.
All my merch, man. Like, literally, he takes half my paychecks every other month. Like, it's like he comes out with new shoes. Actually, I got excited about the new line that came out, because I was like, you know what? Those actually are the same color as the shoes I just bought. So I ain't got to go and buy these, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, man, hands down. I already noticed it when I saw the shirt. I was like, man, that's The Rock all the way. And I saw you drinking this energy drink. I was, checking out your social media, like, hands down, man. Everything he does, man, I love it, man. I love it. So I'm all the way there with you on that, though. But what you learned in those 6 years, as a wrestling, as being a wrestler, and now being on the other side of it.
The terminology of paying your dues. That was the big thing. Respect. That is more said than done in any sport, but wrestling itself, I think, takes it more serious than most sports. You really have to respect of what you're doing in there, because people have died doing what you're doing. People have almost lost their lives doing what you're doing, and you have to love this to do it. Like, I tell people all the time, like, this is like a janitor gig. Like, if you're going into like a heavy business, this is like an intern type gig. Like, literally, you're working yourself from the ground up. And what I tell people all the time is, go in there open-minded. Like, I tell people like how I do on a podcast. Like, go in there open-minded, ready to learn, and pick out what you believe is going to help you. Because obviously there's going to be some knowledge that people are going to give you that it's pointless. But in ways, it still helps you adapt to what you need to become. And that was one thing that I really took serious, was respect and listen. Like, those are the two main keys you need to learn how to do. And when I first did my first match, I learned what feeling the crowd instead of begging for the crowd was, because those are two different similarities, and it's more said than done in all of wrestling.
Yeah. You're right about that, man. Hey, that's real cool, man. Like, me coming up, watching wrestling since I was about 9 years old, 8 years old, in the Attitude Era, about 98, 99ish, man. I love wrestling. Like you said, I've been a WWE guy since the beginning, since I can remember. And at the time that I was coming in, of course, you had WCW that was around. That I really never, got into, but I was always, man, WWE was it. It was just larger than life characters. I always, even, as time got older, and I just, of course, my love for wrestling stayed, and I always, wanted to do something, into wrestling, and of course, I was in a wheelchair, so I was like, yo, man, I can talk about wrestling, especially when this podcast, thing got really, really big. So I was like, yo, man, I got really cool insight. I would love to learn and chat with people around the world, who indulged into wrestling, So I definitely know what you're talking about, man. And yeah, man, respect is a big thing in wrestling. Very, very big thing.
They hold grudges a lot longer than females.
Hey, you're right about that, man. You're so right about that. With seeing guys like AJ Styles and stuff like that, when you were wrestling, then that gives you a more hope that you could be, a wrestler versus than seeing guys who were in, WWE or WWF who were, big as Hulk Hogan or stuff like that.
It did help. Guys like Finn Balor, stuff like that. I mean, I realized age is just a number because most of these guys that look super young were really old. Like Finn got in, I think, NXT around his 30s, like almost his 40s. Yeah. So it was just like, and he looks like he's 20 something years old. So I had motivation, and I've seen Finn Balor at a couple of shows, and I was like, I'm about the same size as him. He might be a little bit more shredded down there, but I'm like same size as him. And that was another thing with my wrestling thing. I kind of got an ego a little bit my first year because it was like, you know what? I'm getting really good, but it started being my enemy at the same time because it was like, okay, now I'm getting an ego. So it's like, that's where I say with the listening part, because at that time, I'm getting that all in my head is like, I'm seeing all the good feedback about watching my matches and stuff. And like, man, that dude is going to make it. That man is going to do good. He's going to be here for the long haul. And I started feeding that really well. But then also at the same time, my listening kind of like started closing a little bit. And then obviously I got a reality check in one of my matches when I got my first receipt. And needless to say, ears were wide open again.
Hey, wide open. I bet they were really wide open after that.
Especially and you could tell how hard that hit was. I took the mask off. My eye was just still sitting there like an imprint of the white glare of it with the black side on it across the eye. I was like, okay.
Oh,
I was like, I got it.
Oh wow, man! Speaking of masks and stuff, you say you wore a mask. And also, you got too big. Your ego got large. How did you handle, all of that? And also, you had to wear a mask, so people didn't recognize you in public or whatnot. So that was a fun
part.
Yeah,
I gotta say that's a fun part about wrestling because wrestling, the traditional thing about wrestling is when you're a babyface, you never go with the bad guys. You never ride out and you never are seen in town with the bad guys. And I think wrestling, I still have that old school mentality. Like, even though I was in a mask, luckily I got that privilege. Like, hey, you don't know who I am. So it's like, I could go ride with whoever else. Like, I could go play around in the entrance and stuff like that. Like, you wouldn't know who I am. So that was a cool part. Now, the social media part, that was tough. Like, because I had my original Facebook my Facebook and anything, and then I tried to make a Facebook account with it. Obviously, the name American Prodigy is not a real name, so I just had to make the sports page to it. So it was just at that cross. I had to literally realize how to enjoy being American Prodigy, but also keeping it very secretive very different from what Warren Marlowe was. Like, Warren Marlowe, very happy, giddy guy, but I would terrified of heights. Like, I was scared of heights. Like, I'm terrified of it. So I even made that change when I became American Prodigy. I was like, I'm gonna do stuff I never would do. So it make me look completely different to what they see from me, because what I was known for is basketball and football. So when you say from me getting that ego and stuff like that, I've had that just from those sports, because I was really popular with those sports. And it's kind of taught me how to do leadership and how to basically become a team player. And I think that's another reason why it was so easy for me to understand the wrestling background at first, because I kind of was already in that type of situation. But when I had that ego and stuff like that, and I was having great matches, then when it came to my 5th match, I'll never forget it. It was probably one of my worst matches. It was in Abbeville, Georgia. I just did a little squash match with one of my good friends, and it was basically like his 2nd match. And we just did a squash match right there, and then we did a run-in, and where they were attacking me, whatever. And then the booker at the time, he was my tag team partner built in to get this big match for the main event for the show that end of the night. Okay. So that was my first tag team match. And that was a struggle at first, trying to work on a tag team match, because my character-wise, I was agile, just very athletic, able to go relentless. I had that David versus Goliath attitude. Like, you would beat me down, but I just always relentlessly keep fighting. That's what I believe in a babyface. But I thought when he wrestled with me, because he was very old school, original, and he's been wrestling for so long, I thought I had to wrestle his style. And needless to say, didn't go well. My old school look, trying to do all his moves, were not going well. And then it was just a big squash. And then, like I said, that gave me a reality check. That was probably one of my worst matches I've ever done. And I made a freaking promise to myself I'd never have a match like that again. And I kind of stayed true to that one, because that one literally, I stuck the joint on, and I was so upset about it. So upset. So it definitely taught me how to learn on that.
Yeah. Hey, that's what it's about, man. Just learning each and every day. Just learning in the wrestling world. Just really, really learning. You talked about on your podcast, and you just mentioned how you were afraid of heights. And, to switch everything up, from American Prodigy, you did stuff off the top rope. How was that? Because you were afraid of heights.
I just realized how high it really was. And the best thing about wearing a mask, 9 times out of 10, I was probably closing my eyes. Especially one of the matches we did where I jumped completely out of the ring onto a crowd of guys. Luckily, thank God for all of them, and we all did it safely. But it took me about 2 months to actually get fluent with it and keep going. And like every training session, every other week, I think I do like 2 training sessions a week. We were literally constantly having me jump in and out of the ring. And it started getting to be really pretty good. And the funny thing is, and you watch all these videos of people doing their tricks now, I wasn't doing it on a mat. I was literally doing it on the ground. So the worst case scenario, it was in my mindset is I'm just going to fall. So obviously, what goes up, you're always going to have to go down. And that kind of like got built in my mind. But it was definitely a change. And it was pretty funny to watch my family see that match where I'm on the top rope and they're looking at, I remember they text me, they're like, "Are you sure you're wrestling tonight? Like, you would never be this calm on a top rope right now." And I was sitting there just laughing when I was reading the messages.
Hey, man, that got to be really, really awesome right there, man. Really, really awesome. But you guys, man, we're going to move on here on Talk Pro Wrestling. You mentioned how, you're really old school mentality. And it's been going on. This topic been going on for a while. I talked about it on the podcast. Do you feel like social media has effect on today's wrestling?
Yes. I hate to cut you out, but yes. I think wrestling is getting to the point where we're just wanting to cater everything to the crowd, but us doing that is also failing to tell stories. It's failing to the thing that drives me nuts about wrestling now, and this is what I learned also wrestling, is a push is not you always winning. A push is basically giving you a shot to prove that you belong to keep going for the long haul. And I think what WWE did with Cesaro was a great push. Do we know what's going to happen next? No, but it's a start. And I feel like wrestling fans right now, I hope they don't get mad at me when I say this, they just feel like they know everything about wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that drives me nuts about fans now, is just like when they talk the slang for wrestling, because wrestling has different talks. And when we talk about, oh, they're jobbing them out and stuff like that, I'm like, not necessarily. Like, that's giving them exposure. It's up to them to show their character. And I feel like that's one thing wrestling needs to get back to, is character wrestling. But wrestling generations have changed. And we've got the New Japan wrestling, we got all that stuff. And back then, New Japan was actually called the crappy wrestling. Like, if we all want to be real, like, I remember when wrestling, like when workers and stuff would tell me, like, hey, if you didn't want a long career in wrestling, go to New Japan. Because it was just, their stuff is, you don't land on your head, you're showing disrespect to them. And that was one thing, like, I had to really realize, was just the styles of wrestling and the types of wrestling is just different in different areas. And obviously now we're bringing out the overseas type wrestling to the US, and it's got its goods and bads, but character wrestling needs to be a must again.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying, man. I had to ask that question, and a couple of people agreed with me. A couple of people said no. Some people said social media has helped wrestling.
In ways it has. Like, on the independent circuit, yes. I say this to this day. You can now have a lifestyle working independent wrestling just as well as you could do in WWE and stuff like that. Like, I've had a guy on my podcast, his name was Devin Anderson, and he wrestled shows with AJ Styles, and he was telling me the reason why he wouldn't go to WWE at a very early time is because he was making more money doing indie shows and working his lawn business, his landscape business, than what he would do, be traveling everywhere just to get basically $600 just to work a show. Because it's just a mindset. And like, I think it's been so overdone for so long. And now independent wrestling is getting the looks, the exposure now. And that's also a good and a bad thing too. And that's one good thing I'll say about AEW. It's an outlet for independent wrestling. And also, I think it's also opening doors for independent wrestlers going into WWE in ways too, because now WWE is partnering with Evolve and stuff like that. So now that's actually making them see, hey, independent guys can do it. Because for the longest time, WWE would not sign independent guys unless if you were AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, and they had to fight tooth and nail to get CM Punk. So independent guys were shunned upon. And like how we just said about character wrestling, look at Stone Cold, look at The Rock, look at Triple H. All the guys that were considered main powerhouse guys, they were character based. When they were the mechanics, you didn't know much of them. You didn't care to know much of them. You started hating them because you just saw them as a basic wrestler. And that's one thing I feel like wrestling is having that trouble talking about now, is because you can only do so many matches, the same things. And I think I listened to a podcast from Bully Ray, and he was talking about Ricochet. You can only do so many 450s in one match. And I feel like with WWE, it's actually helped him learn the timing to do a 450 splash. And it's teaching him how to resiliently come back. Like, he's got that David versus Goliath attitude. Ricochet is not the biggest guy in there. No. But he's a great wrestler, a great character. And now he's properly, for the longest time, I thought he was just a high spot guy. Like, when you watch that Will Ospreay match, how good it was, it just felt like it was like a gymnast match. Like, it was literally like a bunch of flips, everything. It wasn't really telling a story with it. And now, when he does that 450, it's not the opening of the match. Like it's his desperation move, or it's the finish. And I feel like those are the only things wrestling is having trouble on working with. But wrestling has evolved so much. And I think Bruce Pritchard said it a long time ago is we're catering to the millennials. Like we're really at the point where we're just trying to please as many as we can.
Yeah, they are, man. I agree. I'm right along with you, man. Excuse me, because there's just a lot of things that when you watch WWE product now, you can tell they're catering to the millennials, to the new fans, such as, you know, it could be a backstage random segment, you know, with two people in it. Why did you have to show the name tag at the bottom of the screen? You know, like I've been watching this, you know, XYZ. I know, but they gotta cater into the new people. So man, I definitely agree with you and what you're saying about when I was saying about social media and, you know, wrestling. I had a guy on who wrestled for Booker T's wrestling promotion, Tyree Taylor, and a couple other people who just said, yo, man, the place to go is New Japan. Because, you know, if you're in Ring of Honor, if you're in Impact, you know, you gotta do the little bit.
Exposure.
Yeah.
It gives you exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And like now that's great. But at that time back then, no one really watched New Japan. Yeah. If you really think about like a mind landscape matches, like you rarely ever watched TNA. Like I really didn't even know what TNA was until I just tuned in on Spike TV one day and I started watching and I was like, oh, that's where Bubba Ray and Devon went. That's where Christian went. And that was just like, it was mind boggling. Like I watched it just because they were on it because I loved them on WWE. And then when I saw them actually get their name, I'm just like, kind of wrestling is this? Why are they wrestling in like an octagon? Like I was like wondering like why is the ring so different? But it was different and it showed a different outlook to wrestling. And TNA was more of a wrestling show. And I think this is the same thing that happened with WCW. And this is my worry with AEW on as well. With all the WWE releases now, where AEW said numerous times they're not signing all the releasing WWE guys, but they have been. They have been. Yes. And that was one bad thing WCW did. They signed all the former WWE guys. Yes, it gives you outlooks and exposure, but now you're having to pay more money than what you needed to do. And even though you're putting on millions of viewers a show and you're beating WWE in ways, you're losing money too because now you got to pay your workers. Vince has got that mindset where he probably paid the top guys more, obviously the mid-card, but he took care of all of them. And it was able to be management-wise. WCW just felt like they got too high, too held up, and then at the end of it, bankrupt.
Yeah, you're right about that. Like they just signed AEW, got the Big Show, Paul White. They got Mark Henry. You know, a lot of other guys. You know, I really don't know. You know about that. You know, with AEW signing all them old guys, of course, yes, you want to see new, fresh faces. You know, I was listening to your podcast when you was talking about John Moxley. You know, he was basically the same thing over, you know, in WWE. Besides, you know, he just wasn't doing the horrible promos and stuff like that. So, you know, like I want to see, you know, new guys. You know, I like MJF. You know, I like Darby Allin. I like Sammy Guevara. You know, but these other guys is kind of more so. With the wrestling fans, like he said, wrestling fans think they, you know it all. And once a big superstar leaves, such as maybe, let's say Braun Strowman, like you said, with the releases, everybody says, oh, well, he's going to AEW or he's going here or there because, you know, they were this amount of stars or had this amount of star power in WWE. So I don't think that AEW should, you know, sign all WWE, you know, releases. I don't think it's that. I think
give it time. I mean, they're doing great. They're doing a great job. Like, I'm going to be real. People might get mad at me when I'm saying this. AEW is the flavor of the month. Like, it's just like how WCW was. Like, they were the wrestling show. And I've watched a good portion of AEW. I've watched a lot of my friends that I've been in ring with, or I've watched guys that I've been on shows with and see them on AEW. I love the exposure they're getting. But here's my thing about AEW. We're sitting here saying we want to give people pushes. We want to give people exposure and stuff like that. has Matt Cardona got any exposure really since he got on that AEW show than what he got as Zack Ryder? And now we got the cross in with TNA now, because TNA is finally starting to jump back up. Because for the longest time, I thought TNA was bankrupt. Yeah. I really thought TNA was gone. And I mean, it's trying new things. Yeah. But the thing is, my problem is with them is, yes, it's good to put people that have experience on it, but you're trying to make a statement. You're trying to prove independent wrestling has a chance. Why are you signing all these WWE guys? I get it, COVID and everything with that, but why are you not giving the chances to the guys that you are sitting here saying could be the future of wrestling? Like how you just mentioned Darby Allin. It took Darby Allin a long time to get where he is. Sammy Guevara, I've seen him a good portion outside of before he even got on there. A really good dude. His wrestling has gotten so much better. Storytelling, he's really that type of style now. You mentioned Jon Moxley. I really see this as just Dean Ambrose. That's just me. I thought he was like a better in shape version of Mick Foley when he was in WWE. And obviously and when I watched his CZW matches and stuff like that, and I was just like, okay, you're a Mick Foley of this generation. Like, that was just how I saw him. And I'm just like, when we sit here and say AEW's giving chances, I'm like, they're literally doing the same thing the Attitude Era did. If we really want to be real, storyline bases and stuff like that, they're doing the same stuff the Attitude Era did. Yeah. Now, WWE with the Peacock deal and everything like that, they can't do the same stuff they did in the Attitude Era. They cannot do basically everything they've done in the past. And that's one thing I think has really got WWE in a jumble too, is the Performance Center has been a good thing and a bad thing, is because now you're all learning one style. And that was one thing independent wrestling was shunned upon for the longest time. We only learned one style. If you learn from a certain wrestling school, you only wrestled that one style. So obviously when you went and wrestled all these other shows, you put all these guys that say like from territories from Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami, Georgia. I mean, there's tons of areas in Georgia that wrestle. And you put those all together, the styles are so different. Like a hip toss is not like a hip toss like you would do in Florida. Like, it's just different type of things. And now with the Performance Center for WWE, they're learning how to wrestle with angles and cameras. I feel like AEW is not at that mindset yet where they could wrestle around 1,000 cameras in their face at all times. So, I mean, like I said, AEW is doing a great job, but I just want them to keep working on character wrestling and not just worry about matches. Anyone can do matches. It's harder to be a character than wrestle a match.
Okay, you're right about that, man. You're right about that, because AEW got his troubles. AEW got his flaws. With the whole Matt Cardona situation, I remember that when he came in. I already signed for maybe 2 weeks, and that was just it. And he's off doing this thing with Nick Cage, who had a really cool episode of Dark Side of the Ring. So from seeing where Zack Ryder was at then into what he's doing now, hey, it's pretty cool. And AEW, yes, they're giving, and AEW is of course definitely giving some of the independent wrestlers some chance. I had a couple of guys here who worked independent shows for AEW, for that part, which is great because of the coronavirus and a lot of people were out of work and stuff like that. And you also mentioned the Performance Center, them learning one style. Hey, that's I believe that, because that's WWE. They just want you to learn one style of wrestling here. We don't want you to
it's a whole different style. And I've had friends, like one of my main good friends his name is Tyson Maddox. He just wrestled an AEW match, AEW dark match, and he went and tried out for WWE, and you just realize how different WWE style wrestling is to everything else. And this is one reason why WWE don't sign independent guys all the time, is because you're so used to being your independent character. Like, you believe you're known. Like, you believe everybody knows who you are. But when you go to WWE, Vince don't care. Vince doesn't care if you've won a title in New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do there? And that's one thing I think is also the troubles for independent guys going into WWE, is because you're only cared about what you're doing in there. Now, AEW, they care about what you've done in New London, stuff like that. They will bring that in to the exposure for you to go to AEW.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's one thing that is a good thing for AEW, and that's what gives them an advantage to this, is when they do stuff like that. Because WWE is like, hey, whatever you've done, I want to know what you're doing here. Like, Vince has said it numerous times to people. He's like, when he said about Phil Brooks, he says, I don't care what he's done. I don't care if he's been the Ring of Honor champion for 19 years. What is he going to do for me here?
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, he did not think CM Punk was going to be a main powerhouse guy.
Yeah, he didn't. He did not think it. He didn't like it. A lot of people, of course, had they, everybody had their hype around CM Punk. Oh, this guy. Oh, really? Of course, Paul Heyman backed him up. He was the next big thing, the next, so everybody had their opinions, man, on CM Punk. But we're going to move on here, you guys, on Talk Pro Wrestling. And speaking of AEW, you said you did not watch Dynamite this past week, which is
I watched
cool.
A little bit of it just now.
I
just watched a little bit of it.
Hey, it's cool. The last couple of weeks haven't been that great, in my opinion. I know that the Sammy Guevara and MJF match was really, really dope. But all everybody's talking about at the end of Dynamite is really where Jim Ross mistakenly, uttered out next week in Miami. We're going to be here for WWE Dynamite. Hey, I didn't. The crazy thing about that, this wasn't the first time he said WWE on AEW. And the first time he said it, I didn't catch it. I just heard a lot of people talking about it. He called Kenny Omega the WWE champion. So I was just like, and now, with this going on now, what's your thoughts? You think JR just had just worked too long in WWE?
It's just a mistake, man. I mean, JR is JR. Like, yeah. If you say his name, you can't just say JR. You have to say it as JR. Because there is nobody else that's trailblazed an announcement as what he has done. I mean, people make mistakes. I mean, you got to think, he's got to read a prompter or a paper or whatever, or he's just reading off in the back of his head. And you got to think, Daly's place, I have been to that building. It's hot as can be out there, bro. Like, it is seriously hot. So it's like, I mean, he might have just got blown up. I don't know.
Hey, you're right. You're right about that. And mistakes, people, we are all human, and I can take that. You feel me, though? But I mean, WWE Dynamite, though, you're on AEW. So I mean, hey,
the competition. I saw bits of it. I saw. Obviously, you're gonna see that more than anything. That's gonna stand out the most. Is JR just said WWE on AEW. What's gonna happen here today? Like, we're blowing that out of proportion. Like, literally, give JR a break. JR's been doing announcing for so long, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's been announcing since WCW, the NWA days. Like, man can make a mistake.
Yeah, he's the best announcer that ever been in pro wrestling, man. Ever been in pro wrestling. But speaking of pro wrestling, WWE has announced its top 50 greatest WWE tag teams of all time. Did you come across the list? Did you see the list?
I really think Rock and Roll Express should have been a lot higher, but it's an opinion. Like,
this
is the problem we have, man. Mm-hmm. We feel like we know everything. We feel like we have like an NFL mindset. Like, we think, okay, like, actually, let's say the example, LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Obviously, Michael Jordan is better than LeBron, but we got this generation that's saying, hey, he's done this. Hey, he's done this. Let it happen. Like, this is what they believe who's the number one. Like, I'll explain why I think they probably put New Day as number one. For the longest time, when WWE was stale, when WWE only did factions, you remember when Roman Reigns had to partner him with the Dudleys and all of them, and they kept doing the factions when Sheamus was the champ, and when they were doing the league, I think that's called a League of Gentlemen or something like that. Yeah, League of Nations.
Yeah.
In the New Day was the most relevant thing going on. Like, period. Heel, babyface, all you wanted to talk about was New Day. New Day sold a hell of a lot of merch.
Mm-hmm.
I say this. If you can get a grown man to wear a unicorn horn on top of his head in public and think it's normal, you're over. You're over.
Mm-hmm. You're right about
like
that.
Literally, one thing I loved about New Day is you can use your imagination and it not look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need in world now. Like, we get punished on our using our imagination now. We have to make everything so realistic. New Day, I mean, they made a box of cereals over. They've made shaking your butt, twerking on TV over.
Yeah.
Wearing a unicorn horn on top of your head over.
They
like,
were the
every
only
little thing they've done.
Yeah. They were like
it's just creative.
It was the only faction or tag team that hosted a WrestleMania. So, I mean, like, they done a lot of things, you know, as far as selling merchandise and everything, you know. Like, yeah, it is opinion. You are totally right about that. And, you know, and I get why they're number one now. I really do. I just think a lot of other tag teams should be closer a little down.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, Rock and Roll Express should be at least the top three. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Rock and Roll Express, I mean, I think the reason why they didn't rank them as that, because it's a WWE ranking. And most of these tag teams that we are wanting in the top 10 were not good in WWE. And like we have said numerous times, WWE is a different style. Even back then, like, it just was not like the NWA type look like how we saw stuff. And I'm really glad that Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas was ranked pretty high. I did like that part. And the DX one, I really thought was on key for that one. But like I said, with the New Day thing, man, I think it's just as a WWE base wise, I think they earned it.
Hey, they did. They really did.
Plus, they're not split right now either, so obviously they're doing something still.
Yeah, they really are. They really are, man. Speaking of another thing, man, a lot of guys, you know, of course, if you're talking about them WWE, then they winning, I guess, at least though. But another thing, people were really sort of feisty, but talking about it, I didn't see too much of it though. But it was a writer, a WWE writer, who got released and bashed a lot because she admitted on a podcast. I'm not too sure what podcast she was on, that she admitted she knew nothing about wrestling. And of course, she was hired by WWE and they released her. Thoughts on that?
I mean, maybe she lied on an application. I don't know.
Because the people say, "Oh man,
we put too much effort into finding stuff out like this." Like, this is my thing about wrestling, and you made this conversation about social media thing is, let it happen. Let's not go into the thing where, like, when we do the wrestling reviews and stuff like that, that's our opinion. That's not us saying, well, this is going to happen, even though it's predetermined and stuff like that, and we can kind of see the outlook. That's one reason why I love the Royal Rumble. And when Edge won the Royal Rumble this year, I couldn't guess that. Like, I didn't think that was even going to be a thought. But it was something new. And that's one reason why, oh my gosh, it was the greatest show ever, because we couldn't predict it. This is the problem we have right now. And this is one thing I wish wrestling fans would see too. Yes, the dirt sheets were out back in the day, but you didn't really want to look at it nonstop to see what was going to happen. You wanted to be shocked. And I feel like that's one bad thing with WWE right now. Everything is promoted early. Everything's already said about John Cena stuff. Let it happen.
Exactly.
Just let it happen. Even though we've got this thing where John Cena is imaginary, but like literally just let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say on this. Like literally, I say this when I see this thing on Facebook or something like I say, well, here's the reason why they lost. I literally put in a comment because he lost the match.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. Like, just don't think of it so much into that. Don't see it as, oh, he didn't get this much out. Braun Strowman got a lot. When he was the champ, I didn't expect anything out of it. And they actually saw that this man could carry a title. And this man really could wrestle and tell a story in the ring. And I think that's why he got longer with the title, because he proved something that happened with Roman not being at Mania. He made an advantage out of it and proved that it could be a better chance for him. So, and you didn't predict it because you did not go so in like, oh, when's Braun going to drop the title, stuff like that. Like you were just blown away just what happened. Mm-hmm. So like all I can tell people is just let it happen and just enjoy the show again. Like don't go in there thinking, well, let's see what WWE screws over today. Like go in there and see it as what's going to excite me. Like that's how I see a podcast. Like when I do an episode, like an example, like say if I'm to do one with an author, I literally go, what's going to intrigue me about this author compared to the other 5 authors I've recorded with in the past? What's going to be that thing that's going to be like, wow, I did not realize that. And that's always happened because I go in there with open mind. I'm not just sitting there going, oh, you write a book? Cool. Well, Johnny over here told me how he wrote his book. How you write your book? Oh, he kind of said the same thing. No, I go in there with an open mind. And with the writer thing about that ordeal, I mean, we just blew that out of proportion. I feel like maybe she just lied on her application.
Yeah. Hey, another question I thought, because, hey, a lot of people was just, of course, like you said, just blew it out of proportion. Oh, that's why WWE is XYZ, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, who is she? Who cares?
It might even brought press to her. I don't know. Maybe it was the point where they might have released her just to see if they give her exposure, and then they're probably going to rehire her back. We don't know.
Hey, I don't know. But we're going to move on, you guys, here on the podcast. You just mentioned Edge. Edge returned on SmackDown last Friday night to come after the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. And you mentioned he shocked you at the Royal Rumble winning it. A lot of people were saying, maybe, if they did not say he was going to be in it, then, it would have been more a shock factor.
I saw Daniel. I really thought Daniel was going to win.
Yeah, because I did too, because he said he never won a battle royal in his career. So yeah, I did.
I was really thinking Daniel was going to win it, and when he was put in WrestleMania, I think I messaged you on the same day too, because I know I messaged Blackheart from the Over the Top Ropes podcast.
Yeah,
and I really thought it was WrestleMania 30 Rebirth. And I was really excited about this match. There was a lot of people who weren't happy about it, but I was like, 2 guys that literally had to retire, literally told, hey, I cannot wrestle anymore because of a neck injury. Mm-hmm. And both of them are in the main event with Roman Reigns that was not there last year either due to cancer. You can't tell me you did not enjoy this match because it showed a whole story built up to what happened, what transpired.
Mm-hmm. I loved it. I really did. I really, really loved everything. But Edge is back, man, and he's going to be taking on the Tribal Chief at Money in the Bank. Edge, of course, won this matchup that he did not get at WrestleMania this year, the one-on-one matchup where Roman Reigns, of course, stacked both of them and pinned them. And the Tribal Chief is amazing. I'm really loving what he's doing right now. I'm really loving all the story.
He's literally what John Cena would have been if he was a heel.
Really?
That's how I believe it. I feel like this is WWE making up for not putting John Cena as a heel.
So you really think John Cena would amount to what Roman Reigns is doing right now if they turn John Cena as a heel?
You gotta think, how over was Cena when he was a heel when he first started? Like he changed a whole platform of a culture. A culture was changed from a guy that was wearing hometown jerseys. That was never done before. and wearing baggy shorts. You're not wrestling in wrestling gear. You're shunned upon in the indies if you don't even think about wearing wrestling gear. Like that's one thing I say. One thing about John Cena was the good and the bad with him in wrestling, because he brought, okay, it's okay not to wear wrestling tights in a show. Like, it's okay to not be that original typical wrestler. I think with him as a heel and with the rapping skills that he had, there was nobody to get him. There was nobody to even step forward with that. And that's one reason why, even in my mindset at that time, when he did the thing with Roman Reigns, I still say is the best promo that has been out in so long. When Cena let Roman have it, you could just feel Roman go, whoa, I got to step my game up.
Yeah.
They're trying to give me the baton. And when he said, hey, I'm doing this better than you doing it full time, that had to change Roman's like, look, we got to figure something out. Like, I can't get jawed out like this. And it gave me that reminding of what The Rock had to experience with when he did promos with Triple H. Triple H brought the best out of him on promo-wise. And I feel like promos now, Roman, the way he is now, is what Brock Lesnar could have been if he was good on mic. And it's like, we're sitting here like, we're praising, oh, we want Roman to win, we want Roman to win. This is literally a Brock Lesnar run right now, if we really all want to be real. Like, this is a Brock Lesnar run as Roman Reigns.
A Brock Lesnar run without him leaving, taking 5 months off?
Exactly. I mean, but you got to think, Lesnar earned it. Lesnar earned it. Like, Lesnar carried when he was there. And I think it's been said for the longest time. They booked Lesnar like how they did Andre. Lesnar is a big star attraction. How many guys can you really have him wrestle every night taking F5s, taking suplex after suplex? Yeah. I used to love taking suplexes, but every night.
You were right though, but come on though, I understand, yes, from 2004 to all the way up into 2000 and I want to say maybe 12. Yes, Brock Lesnar did incredible stuff. Outside of WWE, he have been in MMA. He did awesome. But I mean, when back in them days, and yes, time evolves and change. But Brock Lesnar, when he was back in them days, he didn't just do suplex, F5, suplex.
He actually wrestled.
He actually wrestled. So, I mean, while we couldn't see him maybe every now and then, not, all the time, but every now and then wrestle a match, It was maybe every now and then, maybe when he was the WWE champion or Universal champion, where he'll come in there and he'll put someone over. He'll sell what they doing and stuff like that. But afterwards, it's Suplex City time. That's it, and it's over with.
I like how it was, because it's kind of like how I remember in matches. Like, I told people all the time, hey, I'll give you whatever you want. Just let me have. Don't make me look like I'm getting destroyed. Like, I need some in this match, and I see that's like how that was. Like, if you think of it, yes, Brock doesn't give a lot of people stuff, but look at the matches he did with Finn Balor, and look how creative that match was. Like, he bumped for Finn. Like, it made me look like maybe I got a chance. Like, the thing like, you looking at it like, okay, little guys have actually got a chance now. But you had to know how much Brock respected Finn to do that. And when he wrestled Daniel Bryan, oh my gosh, I loved how that match went. Even though it showed Daniel had a style to go in there with Brock. And Brock went with it and actually flew with it. And with AJ, like, there is some guys like Brock will actually do a great match with. But there's also those matches like Goldberg, the WrestleMania match. It was really well done, even though it looked like video game finisher matches, but they did it at a timing that was meant for it. Now,
you mentioned that you were there at that WrestleMania. How did the crowd, perceive that match?
Oh, everybody was into it. I mean, you got to think, we were out there for like 5 hours. So actually, no. It started at 5. The actual show
started at 7.
Started at 7, but we were watching the Austin Aries match, and it was hot. It was hot. Weather was very at its core that day. Let's just put it that way. But the spotlight at the time, I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen the WrestleMania match when we're all screaming, "Turn the lights off," because the light was sitting there blaring people in the eyes during the ladder match. So, I mean, I'm really glad that we were a part of the WrestleMania that we got the biggest pop of all time with the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Because that was not planned at all. Like, it was little talks about it, but it was just, when it happened, it was awesome. But the Brock Lesnar and Goldberg match, everybody was just really excited to see somebody go through the little barricade. That was probably the coolest part. But I think that was probably what everybody liked about it.
Okay, man. That's cool. That's really cool. On to some SmackDown talk, as we were just talking about. How you feel about King Nakamura being the new king of WWE now? Did you think they should do a new tournament?
Giving him something new. It's giving him something. I think the reason why Shinsuke hasn't got much of what he's got is he's still learning what the English style of wrestling is. And you could tell, like, he's had to hold back a lot. Like, Shinsuke was used to just knocking somebody out. So for him to have to pull his kicks and stuff like that, I mean, it's hard. Like, and still to properly, and like what we just said, WWE is a different style. I think Shinsuke is now adapting to a WWE style wrestler, but his gimmick is still what he was in NXT. So I think the King Nakamura is something new. I love the guy that plays a little air guitar. I've seen him on NXT shows for a long time.
Yeah.
I just thought he was so carried away. I really thought that was Elias's baby brother that learned that they were going to probably be a tag team in the future or something.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, man. I mean, when we sitting there watching them do the air guitar, like, there was NXT shows before COVID in Jacksonville at the Armory, and he would be out there, and I mean, he's just sitting there jamming out. My wife was sitting there at the time. She's like, "What's he playing?" I'm like, "That's the gimmick, man. Like, that's his character. He's playing an air guitar." Like, it was something new, something creative. I think it gives him something, and now it's bringing back his old entrance song that is monumental. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be something good.
Really great. I can't wait to see what they did with it. I thought, maybe they would have just waited for maybe a couple of weeks until we get the fans back.
I thought a pay-per-view would be a pay-per-view would have been a better change for it, because it would show more work ethic that Corbin did to be that king character.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he did a great job with that. And I mean, and I say this all this time, Corbin is the true wrestling heel. If you see him in an airport, you're just gonna hate him. Like, really. And that's one thing I love about when you talk about Baron Corbin and stuff like that, is it's a true wrestling feeling with him. Like, you're not gonna go over there and ask him for his autograph. You're just gonna sit there and look at him and like, we don't like you. Like, you suck. Like, something like that. Like, those are the things that you feel with him, compared to like wrestlers like Kevin Owens and stuff like that. It's like that mutual still feeling with those characters. So I really wish they did something different with the crown being changed at a pay-per-view. It could have probably produced the new upcoming for the King of the Ring, probably build that up, bring that back to what it used to be.
That's
and like, I used to enjoy the King of the Ring tournaments.
Yeah. And King of the Ring tournaments were really cool, man. Really, really cool. I thought that was, like I said, it was going to wait a couple of weeks, maybe bring back the tournament, and, have sort of, I guess, Baron Corbin defend his crown in the King of the Ring tournament.
I think they were just begging for ratings, though. I really think that's what they were doing, especially when
they did.
Raw and SmackDown did a Hell in a Cell.
Yes.
When has that ever happened?
Exactly.
When has that ever happened?
They did it for Raw because USA got mad at them that they didn't do a theme show for Raw, but they did it for SmackDown over on Fox. So then they just pleased the networks. That's basically what they did. But yeah, man, times have changed. Speaking of times have changed, I'm sort of loving this Dewdrop thing. What you think about it? I'm sort of loving it.
I saw your post. I saw your post when you first said this. I love Piper Niven.
Yeah, I do too.
Mean, she was a good character, and that's what I'm saying. It's a character wrestling. I mean, I could tell when they made the announcement to her name, she just even looked at us like, "What? For real? We doing this?" Like, obviously, I think she was playing it off, but I'm excited to see what's gonna happen with it. It's giving Eva Marie absolute heat, which that's what she's always been there for. I thought it was pretty funny how she wrestled her match, and she actually jobbed out to Naomi earlier on when she was the Funk the Dactyls, if people don't remember. So it was pretty cool to see that Naomi basically got annihilated by Dewdrop, now what we call it. So, I mean, it's something new. I'm excited to see what happens with it. That's even like the Nikki Cross type thing. It's something new.
Yeah,
She asked for it.
Exactly. I didn't know. Everybody was so mad. It was like, oh my God, look what they did with Nikki Cross. But she came up with that. That's what she wanted to do.
Look at it like Molly Holly. Molly Holly, monumental wrestling. But we remember her as Super Molly Holly. Like, that really helped the Hurricane get his shine on. So, I mean, let's just see where it goes. Like, honestly, I think Nikki got to the point is like, look, I'm getting older. I'm having a kid. I can't be walking out in public looking like a dang gum psycho. Like, literally, I just can't be portrayed as that psycho. Because, like I say, I got that old school mentality is you're your gimmick even outside of wrestling. Like, you having to, when you're in WWE or in these major platforms, you're holding a very big beacon around. Like, you're a role model to these people. Even if you're a bad guy, like, you have to express that, but be polite to fans. So, I mean, wrestling is basically loved more by kids nowadays. So I think that's actually a smart thing to do. Superheroes have always been a smart idea.
Yeah, she pulling everything out of the bag right now. So
plus she's winning matches right now. Yeah, kind of funny with that character. So when you're going over on Charlotte looking as a superhero, you're doing something.
Yeah, she's doing something. And she's winning, though. Speaking of winning, though, NXT crowned a new North American champion this past Wednesday, and Isaiah Swerve Scott. Man, I'm pretty excited for the Hit Row. I love what they're doing.
Long overdue.
You know? Long overdue. Yeah. How you feel about NXT? They doing it? They still doing their thing?
It's the wrestling show. I didn't really know of NXT until I got into wrestling. And I actually went to the Armory in Jacksonville, and I fell in love with everything that was about it. I started getting into NXT when Finn Balor and all these guys in. So after they left, I felt like there was a piece that was just missing. I wasn't really into the Johnny Gargano era. I thought it was good, but it wasn't like the Finn Balor Samoa Joe feeling. Like Enzo and Cass. I mean, that lineup was just blow your mind. And now they're the main roster guys, almost every single one of them. I just felt like for the longest time, NXT was the wrestling show, but they just weren't the main card guys that were going to be in that picture really soon. I didn't really see Johnny Gargano being a big main powerhouse guy going into the main roster. So I feel like now with Karrion Kross and guys like they are doing now, they're getting back to that part where it's getting to where that future is looking bright, where it's looking like main roster has got hope. Like I'm sure people have seen the rumor with Vince McMahon. He's going to the Performance Center, starting to recruit again. So obviously they got something going.
Hey, yeah, they got something going on. Of course, we had last week, I think it was Karrion Kross and Bronson Reed who was called up to the main roster to do some stuff on main event and stuff like that. I mean, like, I'm a big fan of NXT always, have since it came to the network in about 2014, where, Samoa Joe and Finn Balor and all those guys started coming on. And I was really loving it. It was 1 hour, then it went to 2 hours on USA. Then it stopped sort of being that revolving door with new talent coming in. And it's just, like, I don't know. Like you said, you never saw Johnny Gargano being that main powerhouse. I never seen him being a powerhouse. Well, I mean, at least he, could have really great matches. I mean, maybe besides other than with Tommaso Ciampa. But I mean, they don't. Yeah. Is no new. I want to say hot talent that's coming in. I mean, Adam Cole should have been.
I love him as a heel, though. I did not see him as a heel for the longest time. Like, I felt like that's one reason why I was just like. It wasn't at that feeling. Like, when they did a DIY tag team, I liked it, but I just felt like it was pushed upon too much. I felt like it was being thrown down your throats more than anything. And I mean, I tell people all the time, my favorite tag team out of NXT was the American Alpha. I loved everything of that tag team. Enzo and Cass may not have been the best wrestlers, but character-wise, they were there. Revival. That was my favorite match in so long was still American Alpha versus the Revival. That is still by far my favorite tag team match. And I tell people all the time, like, if you want to watch a great tag team match, that would be one from this generation.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's changed a lot, and I love the little thing with Johnny right now with the way, because it's given like if Bruce Wayne and Batman was a bad guy type feel. So I love how it's getting a little creative with that. And obviously, me knowing Austin Theory outside of WWE for a long time and stuff like that, it's really cool to see him getting what he's basically grown up to have for so long. And he's doing a great job with it. Even though it's funny how Johnny is the big, tough dude, and Austin is basically the bodyguard that's getting beat up every week. I love what they're doing with it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it, man. Hey, yo, I appreciate you joining me this week on Talk Pro Wrestling. Before you go, any shout outs, any questions, anything you would like to say?
Nah, man. A shout out to my trainer, Rock and Roll Chris Turner. Shout out to all independent wrestling in general. Shout out to anyone who's given me an opportunity in the last 6 years. I mean, it was truly a blast. Shout out to my podcast, Buzzing with Marlowe. We will be back. We just finished season 2 in May. We'll be back on season 3 in August, the first Friday of August. I produce episode once a week. New guests, new chats. I do it like I do my matches. I don't pre-plan anything. I just call it how it is. And it's just a great chat, and people really are shocked at how well a show is not pre-planned and how well it can go. Like, I tell people all the time, it's like we're an imaginary couch, drinking beer and just having a good chat.
Hey, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Buzzing with Marlowe returns, you guys, this August. Yo, my God, I appreciate everything. You're into health and fitness also. How's that going?
Like I said, I've been an athlete for so long. I've been in that lifestyle for so long, so it's just like I can't get out of it. Health and fitness in general. Obviously, your health is a big thing, especially with COVID. Eat your vitamins. Actually, just be outdoors, be active. Those are the big marquee things. You don't have to have a six-pack to be considered in shape. That's one people have really bad visual on, because now we got the trend of dad bods. Like, that's the new thing now. So, but man, it's awesome. Like, it's just like you're taking control of your actions. You're showing that you can be disciplined in ways. And I treat it like how I do my lifestyles. Like with wrestling, for the longest time, I tell people all the time, you need to go to the gym if you are going to be a wrestler, because you're lifting somebody. Like, yeah, there's some people that can help you up the lift, whatever, but you need to at least look like you can lift somebody. And I tell people all the time, like, I've always trained to what I've always done. So me now not wrestling all the time, Obviously, I'm not doing like the heavy, crazy lifting that I've done in the past, but I still train to basically, I got a little girl that's 2 years old, so obviously when she gets to that 16 to almost up age, I still can look pretty nice look to where boyfriends better not do nothing stupid. So, like I even watched the Mark Wahlberg thing, and he was like, the game still keeps going. Like, you got to be the one to make sure you prepare for the daughter's boyfriend. So I was like, you know what? He ain't lying about that. So obviously you got those goals still. So I've always been disciplined on that scenario.
Okay, man. That's cool, man. Hey, Warren, man, stay safe out there. Keep doing your thing. Keep killing it in the gym, man. Can't wait till your podcast come back to hit more episodes, my guy. Can't wait for that. And, man, I thank you for being on the podcast this week, man.
Absolutely, Dre, man. It's an awesome pleasure. I love what you're doing. Your wrestling podcast. I've always loved how your mindset is with it. And you come in there with an open mind, and that's more said and done than most wrestling. Obviously, we see what's going on. But I love your podcast. And the main one I loved was the one that you talked about, mental health, because that is something that no one talks about. And I'm actually going to take a good action on that going into season 3. We're going to talk about some stuff that really men don't do. So I'm looking forward to that. But Dre, love everything you've done. I appreciate you having me on today. It's great to go back and live the glory days in ways, like I say sometimes. It feels like it's been so long ago, and it's only been like maybe 3 or 4 years now. So it's crazy just how time flies.
Yeah, time flies, man. Time really flies, man. But man, Warren, you're welcome anytime you're on the show, or if you want to come on the main show, talk some other stuff more than, just wrestling on EB Radio and YouTube, man. You're welcome. Just hit me up, my guy. So I appreciate everything.
All right, Dre, I appreciate it. And same goes to you, man. You let me know, we'll set it up.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me this week on the podcast.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yo, Warren, man, I appreciate you joining me this week on the 1130 podcast, man. It was an awesome time chopping it up with you this week, man. Talking all things wrestling, man. From Brock Lesnar to Raw to SmackDown to everything, to Doudrop, to the 50th, greatest tag teams in WWE. Of course, everybody got their opinion, and, just let it be. I seen someone post that said, man, you know what? In the last 15 years, yeah, they are number one. You got to realize, bro, in the last 15 years, that goes back to what, maybe like 2007, 2006. What tag team that has hosted WrestleMania, that's won multiple tag team titles, like 11 tag team champions, and then one of them, one of the members of the tag team been WWE champ. So I mean, yo, man, it goes to the New Day. You gotta really dig that. In my opinion, there's other tag teams on that list, man, that deserve to be a little higher though. But New Day is the New Day, man. They sell merchandise, they do everything. So that's why WWE said, yo, you are the number one tag team in WWE, greatest tag team of them all. So man, that's that, man. That is that. Also, you guys, man, we got Money in the Bank coming up, you guys. Bobby Lashley versus Kofi Kingston. We're going to see how that go. I'm really intrigued to the whole Kofi Kingston and MVP story that happened on Monday night. Kofi Kingston was really excited once he hit him with the Trouble in Paradise and was like, yeah, man, I got you, bro. I got you. You down now. And I'm like, look, Kofi, man, he all excited. But yeah, man, I know Bobby going to win that one then. Hopefully we can get Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. Maybe. Who knows, Just let it happen. Just like my man Warren said, just let it happen. You feel me? With the whole John Cena talk, as he was saying, rumor going around that John Cena will be returning to WWE and later on this month. But definitely for sure next month, he's supposed to be challenging the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, at SummerSlam. So like I just said, just let it happen. If he would just continuing making movies and doing what he's doing and out comes John Cena, it'd be more surprising. But the fact that now we know that John Cena will be returning, it's no surprise. When Edge came back on SmackDown last Friday, it was shocking. It was really, really shocking. I didn't expect them to come out. I really thought Jay was going to come out to say something, or Jimmy, or whatever the case may be, or Cesaro. But I mean, yeah, that's in this day and age, man. We just don't want to let it happen. We gotta let it play out. Man. It's It's weird times we live in wrestling, just times in general. But yo, man, American Prodigy, Marlowe, I appreciate you joining me here on the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling this week, man. I appreciate the support and appreciate you, just coming on talking your crap, man, and everything about wrestling. You know you're welcome anytime here on the podcast, man. You guys, man, go follow Buzzing with Marlowe. You guys, wherever you get your podcasts, is on Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts. You guys, go subscribe to Buzzing with Marlowe, you guys, and go follow him on Instagram. Yes, follow him on Instagram, man. Yes. He got a cool podcast, man. Really, really cool podcast. And he's out there in Jacksonville, Florida, man. I got to get out there in Jacksonville, Florida, man. For real. I know the weather is pretty cool. It was just like stormy here earlier, though. But yeah, man, we gotta do that. I got a whole big list, man, of everybody that I, want to meet and, chat with and have a live podcast or just a podcast in person with, once all this corona and pandemic stuff over with and, put behind us. So, Marlowe, you're on the list, man. You just made the list. Yo, man, it was an awesome show, man. Awesome show. I'm out of here, you guys. Hope everybody have a blessed weekend. Stay safe. It is 4th of July weekend, so do your thing, man. I know a lot of people celebrated 4th of July a couple of weeks ago. But hey, stay safe out there. Stay cool, because I know it's been warm and all of that. But yeah, man, what an awesome show. And yo, man, I know everybody's going to have a great weekend. I know I'm going to try to do that. But you guys, man, before I go, you know what time it is, yo, man. Don't forget to follow the 1130 podcast on all social media platforms. Follow me on Twitter at Dre on Wheels. Follow me on Instagram at the 1130 podcast. Like the 1130 podcast on Facebook. Subscribe to the 1130 podcast on YouTube. You dig? Yes. Like it, leave a comment, and do all that great stuff, man. And yes, the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling, here on Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and even iHeartRadio. You guys, make sure you subscribe and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Tell everybody, tell a friend about the 1130 podcast. Tell a friend about the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling, man. For real, you know how we get down. If you would like to be a guest here on the podcast, email me. That's the 1130podcast at gmail.com, or just DM me on social media so we can work, man. For real. I'm out of here. And yeah, man, it's been a great day. We're about an hour and a half in. Oh, man. What episode? Hope you guys enjoy SmackDown tonight. Like I said, Edge is back. What are you going to say about the Tribal Chief? And, of course, man, Seth Rollins. I know he got a bone to pick with Edge, man. If anybody's seen, Talking Smack this past Saturday, but he was so thrilled. He was like, yes, Kayla. Yes, Pat McAfee, which Pat McAfee is doing a wonderful job on SmackDown. But, yes, man, I'm going to be the number one contender. Yes, they told me, they were going to think about it, and I'm a great consideration. And it was made official that, of course, Edge is going to take on the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank. And Seth Rollins was just beyond himself. Like, I worked this hard. I didn't take no time off. Edge took a time off. He got injured. He's the one who got stacked up and pinned. You feel me? So, like, nah, man. So I'm interested in this. And, of course, let's just let it happen. And even the word is Edge and, Seth at SummerSlam, because, man, this goes back even to when they were in DC one time where Seth Rollins had Edge, by the neck, sort of, ready to stump his head in on the Money in the Bank briefcase when Seth Rollins was the Money in the Bank, contract winner at that time, so, man, this is going to be good. This is going to be good, you guys. But I'm out of here, man, for real. Yo, have a great weekend. Stay blessed, you guys. Give all the glory to God, Give all the glory to God. Yo, it's your man Dre, a.k.a. Dre on Wheels. And I'm out.
I'm from the city, DC, that's where I'm from. 1130 podcast, Dre on Wheels, he is the one. Let's get it, yeah. Who with me? Let's get it, yeah. Who with me? Yeah. I'm from the city, DC, that's where I'm from. Let's get it. 1130 podcast, Dre on Wheels, he is the one.
He the one, nigga.
So let's get it,
baby. He the one.
Who with me?
So the breeze, baby.
Let's get it. You with me? Yeah, they gon' hate, but they ain't stopping this. I'ma keep making hits. Dre and Wills, it ain't no copying. Was you sitting there on the carpet with us? Yeah, we knew we had some options. We blessed, we ain't got no problem. Speak something that I gotta be honest. Told him he was gon' blow